Right on. Well, hello and welcome to Mindset Monday, everybody. I'm very excited for today's call. We have a very special guest joining us, Mr. Peter Northgraves. Hi, Peter.
Hello, everyone.
Thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, thank you very much for having me here. I really appreciate it, and I'm looking forward to this whole session.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, my wife and I, Anna, have had the opportunity to meet with, talk with, connect with, and learn from Peter a little bit over the last, what do you think, Peter? It's probably been about 12 or 18 months or so since we first met. Is that right?
I think so, Matt. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'll tell you, every time I connect with Peter, I'm always inspired. This is just an admiral man. He's got an incredible story. And I always leave my encounter, my interaction with him, having learned something new. So I decided to bring him on today to share with you guys the wonderful gem that Peter is here. So thanks again for joining us, Peter.
Well, thank you. And thank you for those kind words.
Well, 100%. You know, it's really interesting. Peter, we were talking a little bit about preparing for this call and that sort of thing. And he shared with me a couple of things that I thought were super interesting. And one was the fact that he says that he has never had a job in his entire life. And not in the sense that most of us would think of jobs. You know, he's got that entrepreneurial spirit. And he's worked for himself since I think it was the young age of 13. Was that right, Peter? Where you started
correct.
an ice business?
Yeah. I mean, I've always worked, obviously, but I didn't really consider it work for the most part. I mean, yeah, there were days that were pretty nasty, but I've never been employed by anyone.
Yeah.
Always been my own boss.
Always been your own boss. I think that's super exciting. And probably not too many people these days could say the same. But the other thing that I thought that really jumped out at me was when you shared with me that, you've been in this personal development field, a student of this for 35 plus years or so. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct.
Right.
I first met Bob Proctor in the summer of 1988. And that was an eye-opening event. And in Toronto at York University, at just one of his Born Rich seminars that he did. And from that day on, I mean, it changed my life. Because I mean, I was an entrepreneur then as well, but I always knew that there was something more, something more than just, working and grinding it out. There's people are doing something differently. And I really didn't know what it was. But that day I found out, and it changed me in a big way.
Well, I can imagine. Yeah. That's one of those life-altering moments that just shifts the trajectory of your future, doesn't it?
Right. Definitely. Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
So, Peter, when you and I have connected in the past, I've heard you describe yourself as an attitude coach. And I was curious why you chose that and why that's important.
Well, I think that, all of personal development really relates back to our overall attitude, right? So Bob Proctor always said our attitude is a composite of our thoughts, feelings, and actions. So at any given time, what are we thinking? What are we feeling? What are we doing, right? And in order to have a positive mental attitude, which Napoleon Hill has always talked about, being the most desirable thing ever, we really need to be positive about our thinking, our feelings, and our actions, right? And we've all been around people that have had positive mental attitudes, and we've all been around people that have had negative mental attitudes. And we certainly know the difference.
100%.
Yeah.
So in your experience, would you think that most people think that they need an attitude adjustment? Or do you think most people would think that maybe even not give that any consideration whatsoever?
Well, when I started talking to people about attitudes, they really start thinking seriously about it, which I never really thought of before, right? We've always heard the term, change your attitude, right? But no one ever really knew what that meant. Right. But when Bob Proctor, told me that it's our thoughts, feelings, and actions, then it was something that you can picture, right? And we think in pictures. So I'm thinking like, yeah, I need to change my thinking. I need to change the way I feel. I need to change the way I act, both, as a leader in the companies that I've owned and, in public and with friends and, in all different aspects of life. Our actions are very, very important, just as important as our feelings and our thinking.
Right. Yeah.
Mhm.
You're absolutely right that how many times have we heard that as a youngster growing up, like change your attitude or,
Mhm.
pay attention or different things like that. But for the most part, nobody really teaches you how to do that, do they?
No, they don't. They don't.
Yeah.
And, but I mean, using, this whole idea, that Bob talked about, years ago, again, we think in pictures and we think, with ideas, and it's something that we can really pay attention to. I ask myself numerous times a day, what am I thinking right now? What am I
Mm,
feeling? How do I feel? What are my actions? How am I presenting myself? Even like here today, I mean, in front of you folks. I mean, we all have, a job to do if we want to get ahead in life.
right.
And your attitude is covers a broad spectrum of different things.
Right.
I started calling myself an attitude coach, Matt, primarily because I had gone, or people referred to me as a success coach, a mindset coach, a mentor. We both, yourself included, I'm sure, like we've had, different things that people have tried to say, to me, Peter, are you like a life coach, like a lifestyle coach? And I go like, not really. Like, and I kind of narrowed it down to attitude. So that's kind of what I refer to myself as being now.
Yeah, I love it.
Mhm.
I love it. Well,
Mhm.
that's one of the things that is so common and so powerful in our line of work is this idea or this fact that your attitude and your beliefs and your thoughts create your reality. You
They
know,
do.
and can you shed a little bit of light on that? Just how your thoughts create your reality?
It really has to do with your understanding and your awareness of who you are, is really what I sum it down. I mean, it's a hard, I know when you asked me that earlier, in preparing for this segment today,
Yeah,
um, it's a great question, but I think it's really something that you have to get deep into and understand the whole idea of cause and effect,
right,
right? Emerson called the law of cause and effect the law of laws. In
right,
anything that we do, um, in relation to personal development, not only we are looking at our attitude, but our attitude is cause,
right. Your
right?
attitude is cause.
Our attitude is cause.
Right,
So if Emerson is correct, which I believe that he is, and again, this is a really important aspect, is that you have to believe this, right? You have to like firmly have it implanted in your subconscious mind that this is a belief that every thought, feeling, and action that I take is a cause to all the effects in my life,
right,
right?
right.
So once we understand this and really know this and believe in who we are and believe in our potential, then we can understand why our thoughts become our things,
Right,
become things rather, because everything is cause and effect.
right. I think one line that always resonated with me, it really struck a chord with me, I believe is Wallace D. Wattles, that said, things are not brought into being by thinking about and talking about its opposite. And so when people have a
Mhm.
goal to be happier, we're not, we don't bring about that happiness by talking about and thinking about all the stuff that drives us crazy.
Right.
And when we're talking about wealth, we don't create wealth and abundance by thinking about and talking about and dwelling on all of the things that, are expenses or the shortcomings or where we're at or lack or limitation. And that same principle can be applied to just about every other aspect of our life, whether it's our health, whether it's our relationships and things of that nature. But just goes back to that same idea that, things are not brought into existence by thinking about and talking about its opposite. is kind of to your point there. Hey, Peter.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, when it comes to manifestation, I firmly believe that we like do not go out and get something, right? We release it, right? Because everything, if you believe in your divine presence, then you also believe that everything is within you. So, you don't go out and get wealth per se. You release wealth from yourself internally with your thoughts, feelings, and actions. We become who we are. We don't get what we want, we get what we are, right? We've heard that term.
Right.
And so we release wealth, we release success and health from us by the way we're thinking, right? And when we do that, then what we want and what we're thinking and feeling about naturally come to us.
Right. Yeah. So, I understand what you're saying, but I can almost hear, like talking with some people, they would say, yeah, but, and they might interject with a circumstance or a factor or a situation that they're facing in their day-to-day life. And so how do external factors or societal situations, either restrict or hold people back from manifesting what it is that they want? And how would you start to overcome that?
Well, I mean, outside circumstances and factors, like those like comments, like what you were just suggesting, cause people who aren't focused and disciplined to drift, right? To get basically, brought into their vortex, going down the rabbit hole, whatever you want to call it, right? And, I've been in business for myself now, like I said, for many, many years, and I've known this information, but I've also drifted. And the times that I drifted were times when I didn't have a mentor, right? So I know I've taken my businesses through recessions and almost depressions, I've had, huge financial losses, and I've had, very significant financial gains as well. But in those times of negativity, in those really hard times of running a business and not being able to sleep at night, because I didn't know if I was going to be able to pay my employees the next day, right? Those are the days that, you start to drift.
And your mind and your imagination can go to some pretty far out places, can't they?
Can go in some pretty far out places. You go haywire, literally. So by having a mentor or having someone that you can really depend upon to keep you in the right direction, like basically like your own personal GPS, making you go, where you want to go, going after what it is that you want instead of what you don't want, then it makes all the difference in the world. And that's how you can help, control outside circumstances.
Right.
One way of many. Yeah.
I heard a story one time about Bob Proctor at an event where people would come up to him and ask him and how he's doing and that sort of thing. And he'd ask them, how are you? And they'd go off and talking about all the things that they had going on and the stress and the busyness and the challenges and things like that. And this one question that he would ask them, which I think is so simple and yet so powerful, is, well, what's your goal? And right away in a moment like that, he shifts their attention away from what it is that they don't want and the challenges that they're facing to back towards, where are we headed? What do you want? What are you trying to accomplish and achieve? Because energy flows where attention goes. Am I right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. I agree. I mean, having an aim in life, a goal, is the most important thing you can do. The most important thing you can do if you want to grow. Goals aren't for getting, goals are for growing.
Right.
So if you want to grow in personal development and become a better person, and maybe it's a success financially, whatever it may be that you're going after, it's very, very important to have a goal to focus on. And like you said, Matt, that really helps, keep you directed. On days, where you're having a bad day, I know even myself, if I'm up at 2 o'clock in the morning, like, I did have some of those experiences where, I was in like financial distress, owning a pretty large company, and I would focus on my goal and just keep looking in that direction. Otherwise, you're going the wrong way. You're thinking about all your problems. You're focusing on your debt. You're focusing on all your expenses. There's no other way to look but where you want to go.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So what would be some real like tangible or concrete kind of things that you do personally, Peter, to kind of maintain a positive mental attitude?
I use affirmations, auto-suggestion a lot.
How much is a lot?
I mean, it's going on constantly in my mind.
Okay.
Like I
Just
made it a habit because,
okay.
we've probably all heard the fact that we have like 60 to 70,000 thoughts a day,
Right.
of which 90% of those are the same day in and day out. So by taking control of what's going on in your mind, it fills that gap, it fills that space. So just, this random, BS can't, be going on in your mind, right?
Right.
Keep your
Yeah.
mind full of what you want to think about. Think about what you want, not what you don't want. And most of the times our, rambling mind is thinking about problems. It's thinking about what we don't want. It's thinking about possibly debt, traffic, driving into the city, picking our kids up on time from school. Just keep thinking about what you want.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I
Yeah.
liked a couple of things that you said there. You're right. That monkey mind of ours has a tendency to just hop around and jump from topic to topic. And like they say, that space abhors a vacuum. And so,
Mhm.
given some space, given the opportunity, our mind will just fill it with all kinds of things, won't it? Just fill that space and fill that dialogue and fill that time with all kinds of things. And more often than not, my experience is that they're not usually real positive thoughts. It's
Right.
thoughts of what's wrong or what's not right, what could go wrong, and worries and things of that nature. And so, what I love that you said there is that you've made it a habit to just kind of like have that running in the background all the time. And
Mhm.
I think that goes to show that just the more that you say it, the more that you hear it, the more that you do it, the more that you feel it, the more it just starts to run almost on autopilot. Am I right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you make it a habit in your daily thinking, just like you would, if you're driving your car and you're being cautious driving down the road. We do things instinctively, unconsciously.
Right. Yeah.
So create the habit and you'll start doing it unconsciously, saying your affirmations, saying what's on your goal card, perhaps.
Right. Yeah.
And, most of you probably know too, I mean, the fact that when we say affirmations, we have to have the whole feeling
Right. I
component.
was just about to ask you about that.
Yeah. And also action, right? So I
Right.
came up with kind of like my own word. Instead of affirmation, I call it like affirmotion.
Oh, affirmation. I love that.
Affirmotion. So, because as you're, saying your affirmation, I'm so happy and grateful now that, whatever your goal is or whatever it is that you want to affirm, you have to like be taking action with that as well. And the action is what also helps give you the feeling,
And so
right?
why is the feeling so important? I mean, I've heard that in the past that, you want to feel the feeling of the wish fulfilled, but why is
Mhm.
that important and how do you do that? Like, what do you mean by taking action?
Well, when you take action, I mean, you usually have a feeling of determination, right?
Right.
A feeling of eagerness, enthusiasm, perhaps, excitement, whatever it may be. But that question, though, about, why is feeling so important? Again, it really comes down to a knowingness and awareness of who we are and how we operate as human beings, right? And having the belief that, this material, actually works. So the way I kind of describe it, Matt, is the fact that Nikola Tesla was quoted as saying that if you want to know the secrets of the universe, think of it in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration, right?
Right.
So
Right.
our feelings are our frequency.
Right.
Our feelings in our human body are our frequency. So if we're thinking of our goal, like as if we already have it, and the fact that we love it, like, I don't know if you ever heard that before, but you have to love your goal, right?
I have
If
never heard that
if it's
before,
like you
but
want a new home, you have to, imagine that home in your mind and love it. Picture, your partner and possibly, your children, your family, your pets, whoever in that house, and loving the whole experience. And that is part of the feeling. Like, that's the frequency that
right.
you have to be on to be in harmony with your goal,
Okay.
right? So you
Yeah.
can't be thinking about your goal and being worried about it,
Mm.
right? You can't be thinking about your goal and being scared, or
Mm.
being doubtful. Doubt, fear, and worry are the three um, variables that Napoleon Hill talks about in the book, Outwitting the Devil, right?
Okay.
I don't know if you've read that book or not, but
I
yeah,
have. I love that
yeah,
book. It's
I
mind
know it's
blowing.
amazing. Yeah, yeah. And so it all comes back to feeling and frequency. And I always look at our feelings is also like the fertilizer that makes a seed grow. In
Mm.
the garden, we can all plant seeds, but if you don't nourish them in your garden, they're not going to grow. So if our
Right.
seeds are thoughts, we have to nourish those thoughts, and we do that through our feelings.
Okay. Yeah.
So it's kind of just like one way how I explain it.
Yeah, I love that, and it brings up images and visual visions in my mind, just as far as being able to picture that. And
Mm-hmm.
you're absolutely right about, what did you say, that fear, doubt, and worry
Fear,
are
doubt,
real,
and
like,
worry.
vibration busters, aren't they? Like,
Busters.
they'll just kill you. They'll just pull you right down into that low vibration state.
Yeah, yeah.
But so one of the questions that I hear, and maybe you can shed a little bit of light on this, Peter, is like, okay, well, I understand affirmations, or, I'm aware of the word affirmations. I hear that we're supposed to feel the feeling of the wish fulfilled, and I know that that's important. I want a new job, or I want a new career, or I want a new house, or I want the new money, but I don't have it yet. So how do I feel like I already have it? Do you have any, like, tips or any advice or suggestion on where somebody could start to be able to tap into that feeling of the wish fulfilled?
Well, part of it again goes back to knowing and understanding like who you are as a divine being,
Okay,
right?
right.
And
As
your
a
relation
spiritual being.
to, yeah, like, our relationship to, the divine source, God, infinite intelligence, whatever, and whoever you want to call this power. And if you understand that, then you can understand where your wealth is coming from, right? Because, God is our infinite supply. The divine is our infinite supply. If we're, again, Bob Proctor always said how, a lot of us think that we're human beings having a spiritual experience, but we're actually spiritual beings in a human body having a human experience. So if
Right.
we're spiritual beings, we can access that spiritual divine power that we have. So I know it's hard for people that, want, let's say, to earn $100,000 a month in their business or in their job, whatever it may be. And the most they've ever made is $5,000.
Right.
But when they understand where their power is coming from, and have a belief in that idea, and a belief in the knowing that when they communicate with the divine, when you communicate with your higher power, you're actually, making a request.
Mm.
You're actually making, you can even say like an affirmation is a claim,
Mm.
like I claim this, like it is, you've heard the term too, like it is done, right?
Right. And so it is.
Yeah, yeah. And, you can, and I don't, relate things to the Bible a whole lot, but when it comes to God, I mean, Moses always used to say, thank you, God, for hearing me.
Mm.
Right. So, thank you, infinite intelligence, for hearing me,
Mm.
And like, we haven't talked about this yet, but this is where, the whole idea of faith and belief comes in,
And
right?
gratitude, maybe
And
too.
gratitude. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think, one of our biggest paradigms in our lives is the fact that we think that we're alone, and that
Mm.
we're not supported, and that's like the furthest from the truth.
Okay. Well, you bring me to a very good question here, and I have two more questions, and then I'd like to open it up to any of you guys. If you guys have anything specific that's on your mind or on your heart that you guys would like to ask Peter, um, um, you're welcome to do that at the end here before we let him go. But Peter, what do you think, in your experience and from the work that you've done with all of your clients, what do you think is one of the biggest things that's holding people back from achieving their happiness or their success or manifesting their desires?
Well, Matt, I think it's a couple different things, actually. One being lack of desire,
Okay.
and another being lack of discipline.
Okay. Interesting. So
And the
tell me a
fact
little bit
that,
about those.
well, the whole idea of desire,
Yeah.
is so important, because if you're not motivated, subconsciously to go out and do what it is that you want to do, then you're not going to do it. And the
Right.
reason why we're not doing it usually is because of a paradigm, right?
Mm,
And we know what paradigms are,
sure.
right? So, and then the whole idea about discipline is that um, some people don't want to do the work. You know, they don't want to write their goal out 10 times every morning. They don't want to do affirmations. They don't want to study every morning. But I mean, it's part and parcel of what we're doing here. It's just the way it is, right? I think it was Jim Rohn that said, if you don't like the way the laws of the universe work here and the way things are happening, then go get your own planet.
Yeah.
You know,
That's right. And good luck with that. Hey.
and good luck with that. But I mean, it's just the way things are done. So we need to study every day. Um, we need to do our affirmations. We need to write our goal card. We need to imagine and visualize and feel
Feel.
and
Right.
feel. I mean, it's what we have to do.
Right. I think another way to put that would be like the laws don't bend or break for any of us.
Right.
And our challenge, if we want to succeed, then is that we don't try to change the laws. We don't try to change the outside. Our challenge then is to mold ourselves to
Mm,
make us, kind of more in harmony with the laws and the way that they operate, so that we're working with them rather than bumping up against what's essentially a 12-foot thick concrete wall.
right. Right. Yeah.
You know?
I mean, I think you nailed it, Matt, when you said, like, it's all coming from us, right? Everything. So, we can't blame circumstances. We can't blame, our boss. We can't blame the economy. We want to, we want to,
Right,
play the blame game. It's easy to go in that direction,
right,
and find fault for everything, but we
right,
have to go inside. And when you really believe, again, going back to the laws of cause and effect, when you really believe that that is your power, then you'll come to realize quickly that if I want to change my outside circumstances, I have to change my inside world. And
right.
when you start doing that, things change. They really do.
Well, and to your point there, Peter, I think that when you get to the point, like you're right, it's a lot easier to point the finger and lay the blame and put that onus on somebody else. And the paradox, though, is that when you kind of take ownership of some of that, and when you had, take responsibility there, it's actually very empowering. And I imagine you mentioned, you alluded to this a little bit, that when you accept and acknowledge the fact that, hey, you know what, you are a spiritual being, and that there's a part of you that's more powerful than you could probably even comprehend, it kind of opens up an opportunity there for you to explore that, learn a little bit
Mm.
about yourself and about your potential too, don't you think?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, it's like you're you're casting the burden, right? Like it's
Casting.
taking a lot of like I know of myself, and I mean, even though I've studied this material for a long, long time, I still have days where, I drift, and I get caught up in fear, doubt, and worry. And I'll go back to the whole idea that I'm supported,
Mm,
you know, that there's a power, there's a divine power like flowing through me, right? And all I need to do is mold it and shape it with what I want, and I'm going to get it, right? So there's no need, to wake up in the middle of the night with worry because you know that you have help.
right.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of lends itself to some peace of mind there too, then,
Oh,
doesn't it?
definitely. It really
Yeah.
does. Yeah. Yeah.
I've shared this with my group in the past. I don't know if I've ever talked to you about this, Peter, but part of my process, or sorry, part of my story has been coming to terms with my sobriety and
Mm.
my substance abuse. And the first thing that you need to do there is kind of get good with God and
Yeah.
surrender and
Mm-hmm.
acknowledge the fact that, hey, you know what? I'm not the one. Maybe I'm not in control of the show like
Mm-hmm.
I thought I was. Maybe I
Mm-hmm.
didn't have this all figured out. And like the paradox is that when you kind of let go of some of that control, it's actually very calming and rewarding. And there's a sense of peace in that. But
Yeah.
most people would never think that's the case, you
No,
know?
I agree. And again, it comes back to your understanding and awareness in your beliefs, right?
Right.
Yeah.
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 Well, last question here, and then
Mm.
we'll open it up here because I realize we're going a little bit over time. Peter, do you
That's
have two or
okay.
three more minutes?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Okay. I'm wondering, do you have any like real life success stories of how manifestation works, or of people, either yourself or clients, that have used this material to create what it is that they're looking for or their desires?
I do, as a matter of fact.
I figured
A
you probably
number
did.
of them in my own life. So again, like going back to Bob Proctor in 1988, I was in business for myself, and I really wanted to start an international company. Right, I wanted a company that operated all over the world, similar to what Bob did and wanted to do, and I ended up getting that um, through disciplined affirmations and visualizations and beliefs. And I started and owned and started a candle manufacturing company. Then we sold internationally. I had showrooms all across North America, Europe, like in Milan, Italy, Barcelona, Birmingham, England, Dublin, Ireland. Um, I mean, it was a really fun experience, and I manifested that because I never, was highly educated in business, or any of that sort of thing. I just kept having this picture of what I wanted, right? And I did it, and a lot of it, I have to admit, was like unconscious, like that
Okay.
part of it, because I was just so like focused and disciplined and tuned into what it is I wanted, that I didn't look in any other direction when things started to pull me down. It wasn't until after I already had the business started and going and flourishing, where I had experiences like I said earlier, where I started to drift. And like any business, I had that business for 30 years before I sold it. But we went through recessions and depressions and everything else, and there were rough times, and I drifted because I didn't always have like a one-on-one personal mentor.
Mm,
And I know that if I had of, things would have gone a lot differently,
mm,
better, obviously. The other situation where I manifested something is actually when I ended the business, when I sold it. I ended up selling our business in the middle of the recession, or not the recession, the pandemic rather.
right.
Right, like in 2021, we had put our business up for sale actually publicly, in 2019 before the pandemic started. And then the pandemic hit, and we all know what happened then. And I ended up taking the business off the market, like not for sale, running it for a while, and got my affirmations together, got my visualization together, my imagination, put it to work. And I said, I'm putting the business back up for sale again. And my affirmation was, and I should know it word for word, but I'm so happy and grateful now that our business has sold to the perfect buyers at the perfect price and at the perfect time.
Mm.
And I said that to myself thousands of times a day.
Mm.
I wrote it out in a journal hundreds of times every morning because I was so motivated and determined to sell this thing, right? After 30 years and like going into the pandemic, and I'd started my coaching business at that point in time. I was just ready to be done with it, right? 100% ready. And I used to say, God, the time is now. Like I've done what I can do there. I need the perfect new buyers to take it over. And I want the perfect price for it at the perfect time. And within less than 8 weeks, I had the buyers and they paid full price. And it's now owned by 2 families with young children. Like, my 3 daughters all worked in our business, and taught them a whole lot about business and mindset work too, by the way. But it was like a perfect scenario. And I know it was because of my affirmations, because people would come up to me afterwards and say, Peter, like, this is nuts. How did you do that? How did you sell your business for full price, in the middle of a pandemic, like when businesses are closing down? Right. And I said, I just knew that it was going to happen. Right. I had the belief. And then if you have time, I'll give you a third example.
Sure.
And you've probably all heard of it before, but I walked on fire with Tony Robbins.
Okay.
So I don't know if any of you have ever done that before. So
I'd love to.
So it was something that I always wanted to do. And it was the winter of, I think, 2007. Yeah, 2017. I was like on Tony's email list, right? And you get, these emails all the time. And it said, visit us in Florida at the Unleash the Power Within was what the 3-day event was called, right? And walk on fire. Well, my wife and I, unfortunately, had gone through a traumatic experience. We lost 2 of our best friends in a plane crash that November. So this was like in January. And we were still, obviously overcoming that. And I said, like, damn it, I'm going to walk on fire. Like, I need to do something to prove to me still that there's a higher power. And like, I have to, manifest this. I got to do it. So Tony, that night I walked on fire, Tony taught us how to affirm, right? And how to believe. And we spent 3 hours, a good 3 hours, like from about 11 o'clock at night till 2 o'clock in the morning, jumping up and down in this auditorium, celebrating the fact that we had walked on fire. And we hadn't even done it yet.
Interesting.
So that was the whole idea of feeling, right? Like I was totally exhausted. But we're up, we're jumping up and down in the stadium, and he just says, picture yourself on the other side of that fire, celebrating with all the other people because you successfully walked on fire. Right. And then our affirmation was, when we walked on fire, it was cool moss, like the moss that grows on trees.
Right. Of course.
Cool moss, cool moss, cool moss. So when you think of that, you think of the feeling, that the coolness of it, right?
Right.
So he says, think of that underneath your feet, right? So by the time, I got up to the fire, and I think it was like 20 feet or 24 feet of like red hot coals and fire. This is now like at 2 o'clock in the morning. We're doing this out in a parking lot. I'm just seeing myself celebrating on the other side. I mean, that's all I'm thinking about. And I'm saying to myself, cool moss, cool moss, cool moss. And when my time came, well, I should back up a bit. First of all, he partnered us with other people. And my wife did this as well. very successfully too. And a few of the people that night did get burnt, unfortunately. But in a kind of a sick way, I was kind of glad that they did, because I thought, like if 5,000 people are there doing this and nobody gets burnt, like what's going on? Is there like some
Right,
kind of
right, right.
chemical,
Is it a trick?
in the fire? Is there something, the heat units aren't there? What's going on? But people were getting burnt. So I was partnered with a young guy from New York City who was like a Wall Street investment banker, great guy. And he walked right behind me, and he did get minor burns on his feet. And I never did. And my wife never did.
Mm. Mm.
So cool moss, walked across the fire, got to their side, and we were celebrating just like we had imagined and felt and visualized. Right?
That's incredible, Peter. I love that. And, just goes to show that, old adage, the mind over matter,
Mm-hmm.
and that the mind is capable of overcoming way more than we probably realize or give it credit. But there's something interesting that you said there. You said that, this took place between the hours of 11 p.m. and about 2 o'clock in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder, I know Tony Robbins is a master. And he doesn't do much by mistake, I don't think, or by accident. And I wonder to what extent he did that intentionally, because when it comes to affirmations, when it comes to visualizations, when it comes to speaking and accessing your subconscious mind, it pays dividends to do it at those times of the day or the night when your analytical mind is kind of off duty. And so sometimes when I do my affirmations, I realize that it's better to do that when I'm tired, or even meditate for that matter, when I'm tired, because then you actually have that doorway to the subconscious mind. And if you were to tell yourself cool moss midday, I imagine that most of you would probably reject that. Are you crazy? Cool moss? Have you seen the red hot coals?
Matt, I'm glad you caught that, because I agree. That's exactly right. Because Dr. Joseph Murphy talks about it, Wallace Wattles talks about it, but Neville Goddard talks about it, but getting yourself into a sleepy, relaxed state. Well, even though we had jumped up and down and celebrated, for 3 hours, I was exhausted from that. I was also exhausted because it was at 2 o'clock in the morning. That I wasn't thinking of anything else other than what it was that I wanted.
Yeah.
So,
well, that's awesome, Peter. What a great story. That's on my bucket list, believe it or not. I've been to a Tony Robbins event in the past, but we didn't have the opportunity to do that. And I would have liked to. Would I have done it? Yeah, I think so. I would like to think that I would, but well, hey, out of curiosity, does anybody have any specific questions for Peter? Anything that's come to mind, either in the conversations we've had leading up to this, or in the last few moments since we've had a chance to talk with Peter? Anything on anybody's mind? No. Well, just a curiosity, show of hands here. Who is grateful that we had a chance to talk to Peter today? Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Peter. It's always a pleasure to connect with you. I learn something new about you every time, and I'm always super inspired when I do get to speak with you. So
great.
Thank you again for coming and joining us today, and I look forward to connecting with you again soon.
Great. Thank you very much. My pleasure being here, and I hope my little tidbits of information helps you in some way.
Beautiful. Thank you, Peter.
Good luck and God bless.
Take care. Talk soon.
Okay. Bye now.